I don't know if a regular season behind enemy lines can be any bigger than this one for the San Francisco 49ers, but here we are. Every single one of you, when the schedule came out, this is the one that you circled. This is the one that means so much to the San Francisco 49ers. And I couldn't have a better person on to break it down than the guy who was on last year. And quite frankly, I owe this man. I should be on his channel because I said that I would if the 49ers lost the Super Bowl. My guy Daniel is back. Cannot wait to break this down with him. And we're going to do it all next. All right. Welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second. And as I said, it's behind enemy lines night, Chiefs week. And I got my guy Daniel from RGR, which is where he covers the Chiefs. But my man has gotten a new gig also since the last time we talked, and that is with the Draft Network, breaking down prospects. I love having Daniel on because he is so much smarter than just a Chiefs fan. This man knows his stuff. He breaks down film like crazy, concepts. I geek out on it every time he posts on Twitter. Daniel, my guy, thank you so much for carving out some time to do this with me again. How are you?
Man, I love coming on with you. We had so much fun the first time, and I love the fans. You guys jawing at me and going back and forth, and it's a fantastic time. I appreciate, all the kind words from that, and I love that we get to come here and just kind of talk ball, because that's what this is about, right? It's fun to do the fan segment sometimes, but I love to just come together and break down games on both sides of the ball. Like, yes, I cover the Chiefs, but I love doing this. So I appreciate you having me on, man. I'm doing great.
Absolutely. And I think you're going to have some unique perspectives when we talk about like Patrick Mahomes, let's say, and his quote unquote down year and some of the strengths and weaknesses that the Chiefs have. But there are some narrative things or some other aspects that I do want to start with. And one of them is how the 49ers are viewed to Chiefs fans. And I'm going to preface this and kind of give you the background of why I'm asking this question specifically. So we as 49er fans have this rivalry, but not really, with the Dallas Cowboys at this point. Obviously, in the 90s, it was a huge thing. But in recent memory, the San Francisco 49ers have dominated the Dallas Cowboys. And so when we go to play Dallas next week, actually, in fact, we don't look at them as like some threat to the 49ers. We look at them and say, it's the Dallas Cowboys. And we know that Dallas feels like we have to win this game against San Francisco. Otherwise, like, what do we draw from if we have to face them in the playoffs? I have made the case that I feel like the Kansas City Chiefs, maybe not quite to the extent of, they haven't stomped out the 49ers the way that we have Dallas, but they view the 49ers much like we view the Dallas Cowboys. Do you agree with that statement, or do you feel like there's much more respect there and there's this thought of a threat to Chiefs Kingdom when the 49ers and the Chiefs meet?
I think that the fans definitely feel that way. Like, they feel like they view it the same way. But when we look at the actual games individually, personally, like last year during the regular season, I was expecting that game to be very close. Or 2 years ago, 2 years ago when they played. And I was a little nervous about that game watching it. And then, Juju Smith-Schuster goes off and no one really expects that to happen. And they did some schematic things to take Nick Bosa out of the game. And that's how I view these games. I view them very, very close, tight knit, how they really were in the Super Bowl. It was down, went to overtime. Like, it was not a game that anybody was running away with. Now, you can always talk about how the defenses, specifically for the 49ers, have shut out the offense for specific points in those games, specifically when we look back at the last two Super Bowls. But, like I said, fans definitely view it that way, because if I'm not mistaken, no Kyle Shanahan team has ever beaten an Andy Reid team. I don't think that's ever happened. And it is what it is, right? Like, just like the Cowboys, they have to say, well, I mean, it's not really a rivalry. You know, I'm a Michigan fan. It was not a rivalry with Ohio State until they finally won a couple of years in a row. It just wasn't a rivalry. So I think I view it a little bit differently than the fans do, but they are absolutely out there talking their smack.
Yeah, yeah, and that's really it. I mean, obviously, we can't speak for the team. We don't necessarily know how the team feels internally, but we do know how fans take it and how they view it. And I don't think it's like should be that big of a surprise. I'm sure they view the Ravens the exact same way. Does their heart flutter when they've got to face the Ravens? Probably not. It's not just the 49ers. It's really anybody. Buffalo. It's like they just own everybody at this point. So, yeah, until somebody knocks them off, I think it's going to be pretty tough for Chiefs fans to really look at anybody and take them seriously in a big time game.
Yeah, there's a couple of teams out there. I think the Bengals, people kind of turn their heads up a little bit, and even the Ravens to an extent, like you said, it was, they had that game a few years ago where they went for the Ravens went for it on fourth down. Lamar Jackson, they won that football game too. So I think that the Bills have some regular season stuff on them, but they've played so many times in the postseason now, and they've beat them. That everyone's like, okay, you guys you can have your regular season wins. We'll take the other ones.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, let's talk about the Kansas City Chiefs and some of the injuries that they have suffered so far this year. And they're the worst kind, the kind that end seasons, really. Pacheco may be done for the year. It sounds like there's some hope he may come back, but that's an injury that could end his season. Rashee Rice is done for the year. They never even got to see Hollywood Brown at all. His season was done. And so the question becomes, well, it's twofold. Let's start with the injuries. How has this impacted the Kansas City Chiefs? Really, their offense is where the impact is. What has been the impact? And do you believe the Chiefs can overcome some of this as the season goes along and eventually win another Super Bowl with a roster as it is currently constructed?
Yeah, when you look at what happened, I mean, you expect to come into the season with Rashee Rice, Hollywood Brown, and Xavier Worthy as your 1, 2, and 3. And right off the bat, you don't get one of those 2, 3. So you have to change the plan. And the plan always is now, here's Justin Watson. Here comes Juju Smith-Schuster. We're bringing him back. And against the Ravens, things were working out. Rashee Rice was dominating the middle of the field. And you saw some of the concepts they wanted to do, specifically spreading out the Ravens and just slashing them in the middle of the field, and then getting a couple of broken, busted coverages for Xavier Worthy. Then you have Isaiah Pacheco in game 2. Down he goes. The fact that they're happening so early in the season, while it feels rough, obviously at that time, the bye week came now. Okay. So yes, your plan for this season without 3 of guys that were going to be legitimate guys you rely on. Rashee Rice was not just becoming like a mainstay. He was becoming one of the best receivers in terms of yards after catch in the NFL, and he was dominating that realm already. He was doing that. So you lose that, and then you lose Isaiah Pacheco. There is optimism that he'll come back before the end of the regular season, but probably not until the postseason. Same with Hollywood Brown, probably not until the postseason. So you have to find a way to navigate with this roster as constructed. And like you said, last year they had to do some of that as well. The weapons weren't very good. They came into the season with 7 wide receivers. Not something Andy Reid typically ever does, and that's didn't work out. So they had to take some of the loose fat from the offense and take some of these plays out and do things like that after they lost to the Raiders on Christmas. So they're unfortunately experienced in this department where you have to find some ways to win with the players that you have. But I do believe that Xavier Worthy is going to be a huge part of that. We've already seen Juju Smith-Schuster all of a sudden be what he was in 2022. Like that was not expecting that once again. So I do believe that they have a plan now coming out of the bye week to utilize the players that they have to the best of their ability. And at the end of the day, when Patrick Mahomes finally decides that he wants to stop throwing the football to the opposite team, I think they'll be okay.
So Hollywood Brown might make it back for the playoffs. That would actually be a huge get for them. That would be a huge get.
That's hopeful.
I didn't realize
we're
that.
going to find out. It's really just about how his recovery is going.
For sure. Okay, well the second part of this is, do you foresee the Chiefs making a trade. It, whether massive or not, I mean, it could be as small as Mike Williams from the Jets. It could be as big as Deontay Johnson from the Carolina Panthers.
Mhm.
Do you see them making some sort of move before the deadline? The way I understood it is they were in on Amari Cooper. Now, obviously, the Bills ended up pulling that deal off. Good for them, but it sounds like they're at least sniffing around a little bit. Do you expect them to make some sort of trade for a wide receiver?
Absolutely. I think that they kind of have to at this point.
Mm,
And you went through what you did last year. Why would you? I mean, reasonably, why would you put yourself through some of that again? They want to be able to have an explosive offense still. And Patrick Mahomes is throwing. He's got the least amount of yards, lowest yards per attempt, and his highest sack rate this year. That's not something you want to consistently continue to trot out there. So,
mhm,
yes, I personally believe they're going to be trying to acquire a player, whether it's Deontay Johnson, a guy like Darius Slayton from the Giants, considering he's playing with Mike Kafka, who was the quarterback's coach in Kansas City a few years ago. Dayball runs kind of some similar things. So
mhm.
something like that wouldn't shock me. It wouldn't shock me if the Demarcus Robinson, who is currently on the Rams, would wind up back in Detroit or back in Kansas City, excuse me. So there's just a lot of different players that I think that they'll be looking at. I think, namely, Deontay Johnson should be the guy they're looking for, personally.
Yeah, I think Deontay Johnson's a real possibility. I think they need a route runner type. They need some sort of route technician.
Yeah,
They could, but it's the Chiefs. They could is also easily be like, yeah, we'll just get MVS and bring him back, and we'll be fine. It's like, okay,
please don't,
well,
please don't.
all right. Like, I wouldn't recommend it, but if that's what you want to do, I wouldn't be surprised by that either. Dave said the Chiefs are good, the Niners are good. Fire Lyle. We've got this thing going on where he calls Kyle Shanahan Lyle Shanahan because he's always losing. And it's just taken on a whole life of its own around here.
Wow.
It's funny. Okay. You did touch a little bit on Mahomes down year, and it sounds like you definitely put some of that on him.
Mhm.
How much though is on him versus schematics versus the receivers just not being that good? I was looking at some stats today. I noticed that the league average in weak boxes, so less than 7 players, the league average is about 76% of the time quarterbacks throw into those style of boxes, meaning people are expecting a pass
Mhm.
and trying to defend the pass. Patrick Mahomes is throwing into it 91% of the time.
Yep.
All right. Like that is a massive number, way above league average. So it's like hey, run on us. We're not stacking the box. We're bringing defenders back. We already know the too high thing started 3 seasons ago where
Yeah.
they shifted to that and they do that almost every play against them. So how much of it is what other teams are doing versus how bad he's playing versus the receivers, and maybe some of it is it's just not as bad as what we think. Film says something different. Like, what are your thoughts on this perceived down year of Patrick Mahomes?
Yeah, so funny enough, I just went back and watched every single interception that he's thrown this year, the ones that he shouldn't have
Perfect.
done as well. And a lot of them are just on Patrick Mahomes. Like he overthrew Travis Kelsey in the Chargers game where he was actually triple covered. And at that point, you have 3 guys
Mhm.
converging on him. He just overthrows him. And we know what happened after that. The very first game, he just got late back to Rashee Rice over the middle of the field. He was locked in at Travis Kelsey on the right hand side. Defense comes down, takes that route away. He's late getting back to the middle of the field. You got pressure in his face. He's dropping off his back foot. Instead of taking the sack, he throws it right to Roquan Smith. Bengals game, it's a lot of the same where he throws over the middle of the field and he's not paying attention to the underneath defender. And when we look at all these, and then the last interception is not on him. Like the one against the Saints is not him. You just got to hold that football. Like it's
Yeah.
RPO, throw the football, catch it, and it's not a big deal, but it gets deflected. And Colin Saunders is running back for like 25 yards. I love that guy. Oh, that was so fun to watch for a guy who used to be in Kansas City. Like to see him get that interception and turn right back into a running back like he was in high school. That was so cool to watch. But Patrick himself feels like he's trying too hard. He thinks
Mm,
that, especially after some of the injuries, like, okay, I have to make some things happen. And we touched on how he's not throwing very far down the field. When he does do that, like the second one against the Bengals, that was a play. on second down. If I'm not mistaken, where the clock is running down in the quarter. It should never have been snapped. That is a play that they rushed, and then all it is. You guys know go routes, even for a guy
Yep.
like Xavier Worthy, who's one of the fastest players in the NFL. Go routes have a very, very low percentage of getting opened just because of what you're doing. You're running straight down the sideline. It's very low percentage. He was never open. He was never even close to being open in that regard. And then the DB makes a fantastic play. So, like, that play is one of, like, kind of encapsulates how I feel about the interceptions so far this year. It never should have happened because it never should have been thrown or really should have been snapped. So, I do put a lot of the interceptions on Patrick Mahomes, but I'm also trying to take into consideration, well, their offensive plan and identity has kind of had to shift in 5 games. They've had to make some changes. And over the last 2 weeks that they've played, not the bye week, obviously, some things have started to change and what their offensive identity is going to be going forward, at least until some things change out. And I think it's going to be for the better for them.
Yeah, it's interesting because Patrick Mahomes did go through this last year, and as crazy as it seems, Rashee Rice is a really good player. But last year he was a rookie, and he wasn't just that player instantly. He really wasn't that player until the playoffs came around. Then all of a sudden he was Rashee Rice in season 2. Really, really good player. MVS had his issues all season long. And then, of course, he turned out clutch when the playoffs came. But he faced this last year, and it was almost a little bit worse. Like Juju's not great by any means. But with Patrick, the proof is in the pudding there. Xavier Worthy's actually played better earlier, I think, than what Rashee Rice may have. And so I look at that and say, and you were losing games last year throughout some of this. So to me, it's like, it's kind of surprising that he's pressing through these issues. But I will say this, though, too. Just because you've thrown some interceptions, they've obviously started out 5-0. And some of that is Patrick. I've looked at some of his splits from first half to second half, and he's a completely different player in the second half. A completely different player. He's on his game. His yardage goes up. His completion percentage goes up. Everything improves significantly in the second half. He still finds a way to win, and he knows how to win games. That threat is clearly there still with Patrick Mahomes. In the clutch moments, still seems like he's coming through. Would that be accurate, or?
Yeah, I hate using it because it's so cliche, but they really are feeling like the Warriors, like the Golden State Warriors when they were in there. We don't really have to try in the regular season. And if we do, we'll find a time to turn it on. And at times, Patrick, it does feel like he gets loose with the football, like the interception versus the Falcons. He has Noah Gray on the corner route into the end zone. He just kind of gets loose with it and just kind of throws it up instead of setting his feet and driving it into the end zone. And then you see in the second half of that football game, he's like locked in. It's weird, and it shouldn't be allowed to happen. I don't think players should get comfortable with that kind of, I will say, nonchalance in the fact that we don't necessarily have to try maybe till the second half. It does feel like they're trying some things out now, changing some of their offensive identities to going to a little bit more play action, a little bit more run game, things like that. So it's going to be a little bit different. I think after the bye week, now that we are going into week 7 against the 49ers, you might see them be a little bit more, I guess, locked in than they were over the last couple of weeks of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just curious to see like how this season plays out. I just everybody continues to doubt, and they're pulling up stats and all these other things. I'm like, yeah, but when it matters, he plays good football. I don't know. This is just whatever. Okay. This defense is really, really good. Really, really good. And we've gotten to a point where we just talked about Mahomes, but a lot of people are like, the defense is carrying him. That's the only reason. Otherwise, Patrick Mahomes wouldn't be able to win games anymore. He's terrible. But the defense is incredible. And stats will tell you one thing, and that's why you're here to tell me if these stats are lying to me, because I know that they can. But on the surface, the run defense is very, very stout. Very stout. The pass defense, a little bit squirrely. Now, when they're in man, which is around 30% of the time, they are killing the game. Lockdown. But when they go to zone, which is a majority of the time, they can be had. They can be had. And so that's at least what the stats say. But that isn't necessarily the way that it plays out on film. Why don't you give me the biggest strengths of this defense and the biggest weaknesses of this defense and how you would attack it if you were the 49ers?
So when we watch the defense, and the run defense has been a shock to me just as much as anybody else. Like the
Yeah.
defensive line was a concern for me going into the season. Defensive tackle
Yeah.
outside of Chris Jones, I'm like, what are we doing here? We looking at guys like Tershawn Wharton, Mike Pinnell, who was brought off the couch in the postseason last year. Brought off the couch.
He's a big
Like,
boy, though, man.
he
He's a
is.
big body. Yeah.
And we saw how he kind of at times took it to Trent Williams last year in the Super Bowl. That guy, and then this year he's been huge in their run defense. And honestly, when I'm watching these games, it feels a lot like Steve Spagnuolo's game planning against specific runs. And like go back to the Atlanta Falcons game. What do they want to do? They want to run outside zone. So you saw crashing, you saw linebackers crashing the edge, defensive ends setting a hard edge, getting to the outside, forcing their cutbacks, and then you have linebackers on the backside being disciplined in their cutback lanes, not over pursuing, having a specific cutoff point. Like that's what I'm seeing more so in the run defense. It's Steve Spagnuolo's game planning. Like that's what I think right now is the strength because he's figured out exactly what his players do well and how to plan for the one run that the offense wants to do that they're playing against and how to stop that. And I think that he's gotten to a really good point of figuring that out. Now, defensively, when it comes to the pass game, every single zone coverage can be beaten. Every single one of them, because it's a zone. You just got to find the soft spots in the zone. And other quarterbacks are better at beating it than some. And we know that Brock Purdy is one of the best at just dismantling zone coverages. And that was exactly what happened in the Super Bowl last year, where they came out in zone and Brock is just sitting back there comfortable. He's throwing dime after dime after dime. And then Spags said, yeah, we're going to stop doing this. And we're going to play man coverage. Things changed after that. We know what happened. But the Chiefs have actually aligned in press on a league high 51.5% of the time this year. That's 10% more than the next closest defense. Okay. So they are more comfortable with the players that they got out there. And when it comes to playing press, when it comes to playing man, and then they feel like they have to, Spags is going out there and he's like, I'm just going to put you guys in press and then we're going to blitz. That's what they're going to do. And right now, I think that is their strength, playing press coverage, blitzing, and forcing quarterbacks to make quick decisions into tight windows, which we'll get to Brock Purdy in tight windows in a little bit because, boy, it has been impressive this year. But that's what he wants. Tough throws, incompletions, sacks. Like that's what he's been able to do. So when the strength of this defense has been game planning against the run and then just saying, hey, we're going to play press coverage and I'm going to blitz you and you're going to have to figure it out.
Yeah, it's impressive, man. And that's that's something that stats don't show. It is interesting that they are playing press as much as they are. And it clearly worked in the Super Bowl last year. There's a player, and I'll give you an opportunity. Maybe you're going to bring him up, and I don't want to take your thunder. But if you don't talk about this player, then I'm going to ask you about him. But give me a lesser known player on the Chiefs that might have an impact in this game.
So there's one player defensively that I think people would go to, but I'm going to go with Jalen Watson, who is their cornerback.
That's who I was going to ask you about. All right, perfect, good.
It's so great because another question that myself and a lot of people had is who's going to be the cornerback 2 outside of Trent McDuffie, and we're like, well, you can't really put Joshua Williams and Jalen Watson on the field at the same time and put him in this and put Trent McDuffie in the slot. That makes you weaker at 2 positions. But Jalen Watson has been fantastic this season.
Good, yeah.
He's been so good. And I actually just broke him down on RGR. My film room dropped tonight of Jalen Watson. And we talked about press man coverage. He's got 75%. He's got 75 snaps this year of press man. I looked at every single one of them. That guy is not letting guys go unless it's a really fast player. He's just been, and even then he's got recovery speed. So Jalen Watson has been not he's been, he's been asked to do what corners do in Kansas City. A lot of time it's funnel to the safeties. So if you're playing press man on the outside, use the sideline. We're going to play too high safety, funnel it to the outside. And if you're playing that zone, we want you to funnel to the linebackers and to the safeties. That's typically how they run with their corners. And the only one that you're going to see really play true man coverage from anywhere is Trent McDuffie, where he's just going to say, we'll put you on who you want. And you run with them and you figure it out. But what Jalen Watson has done on anybody going downfield this year has been very impressive. He's not letting guys get separation. And there's a chart, a PFF chart running around where they break it down into the 4 quadrants, right? Where up the top right is your best corners, where they don't allow separation in man coverage, and how often they're left on an island, basically. And he's firmly in that right quadrant, the right top quadrant. So Spags is letting him be on an island by himself and in man coverage, and he's not letting guys get loose downfield very much. So the fact that he's been so impressive this season after the way he looked in the very last preseason game, because he was injured coming into the season. He was injured in training camp, didn't play until the very last training camp, preseason game, and he was out of shape. He was like, dude, he was so exhausted. You could tell he just couldn't keep up. And then it comes into the regular season and he just snaps into like game form, and he has been fantastic.
Was he hurt last year?
No, he was still playing. He got hurt this year. But
Okay.
Jalen Watson has really been rotating with Joshua Williams for a large portion of his career, because both of them have played with other injuries at the Chiefs cornerback position.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty clear that when you get rid of an elite corner the way that they did, and L'Jarius Sneed so willingly, that they clearly had confidence in who was behind him. Right? You don't just give those players up. You make it work if you need to. And if you're going all in to try to finish off this three-peat, you knew what you had behind them, and you felt very, very confident in that. And that's coming through. That's not the only change that they have made in the secondary, though. Your safety position. You've brought in Cook, I believe, from Cincinnati, if I remember his college right.
No, yeah, he played at Cincinnati, but he played when he was hurt last year. He got hurt in week 9 against, or just after week 9 against Miami, but he's back playing at
so he was the starter, and then they had what's his name come in for. Okay, all right, that makes sense. Okay, how's he been playing? I'm curious to see how his career's been going outside of that injury.
Yeah, so Brian Cook has had a little bit of up and down this year. He's not traditionally a free safety. Playing at Cincinnati, he was a box safety, and he's athletic. He has speed, but he's still not fully comfortable as a traditional free safety, and they don't really ask him to do a ton of that by himself, which you really shouldn't. And the Spags is like, fine, we'll play 2 safety, but you see a lot of rotation, and they like to do that. They like to play dime a lot. They're most comfortable in their base package, which is your 3 linebackers or dime, which they have a ton of DBs, 6 DBs, and that's what they like to rotate. Bunch of different formations. You guys know they want to make the quarterback think one thing's coming, and then you're getting blitzed from the other side. Shamar Connor has been that box safety, but he also plays too high. But you only really see Brian Cook as a true safety, whether it's 2 high or 1 high. He does not come down to the box ever. So he's actually being tasked of being that guy that's at the top of the defense, kind of being that roof that they want. And he's got the most speed, he has the most range, so he's asked to do some of that. But if you get him on an island one-on-one, it's not very pretty, because he can be beat, in my opinion.
No, I know that he was a very good run defender in college, and so I imagine that still shows up. I know that he's not playing in the box, but I'm sure he's still coming down and laying some hits. How is Watson as a tackler? I know that that's something that the Chiefs value as well. I mean, when you're playing that much press, and if you do have McDuffie kind of playing nickel, then you're going to have a lot of 3 corners on the field, and you're going to expect those guys to tackle. If that is the case, how has Watson been as a tackler?
He's a short tackler. That's one of the reasons that Joshua Williams is not playing. As much as I like Shamar Connor, he is very much, I'm going to throw my body around. I want to hit people, but technique is not his biggest attribute. But Jalen Watson has been a short tackler since he was a 7th round pick a few years ago out of Virginia Tech. Like he's just Virginia, one of the two. My apologies, Walton. I know there's a ton of different colleges out there, and so he's just been good against the run. He's willing to come down, put his nose, against not just tight ends, offensive linemen. He doesn't care. That's one of the hallmarks of this defense is they don't care for the most part where they have to be against the run, against the pass. You got offensive linemen coming at you. They're going to do what they can to play physical, tough, and be good tacklers.
Yeah, Watson's emergence reminds me a lot of Stevens' emergence with the Baltimore Ravens last year, where it's like he just slowly became the best outside corner they had, and it's continued this year. And it's like, well, Watson is kind of starting to do that as well. It's like, where did this come from? This guy's incredible. So it's really cool to see. I like it when players that are late round draft picks and filling in for stars are kind of written off and they just absolutely crush. So it's cool to see. All right, we got Dave trying to take over the show here. He says, promise the Chiefs laugh at Lyle in the locker room. He says, if Lyle has a plan, then we know the Chiefs win. All right. He says, maybe he won't know how the kickoff works or OT. Oh my God, dude. I don't even want that OT thing. Watching that back and knowing the Kelseys have their podcast and how like befuddled they were that they made that decision makes it so much worse. Dave says Lyle blows better. Okay, all right. Jeez, come on. He says if Lyle acknowledged anything, I wouldn't hate him. All right, fair enough. You've got your Lyle banter in. Here we go. Okay, let's talk about some matchups in this game. Let's start with a matchup that you aren't very confident in, one that sways in the 49ers' favor, in your opinion.
So the biggest issue for me when you're facing this defense, specifically for offenses, covering tight ends and slot receivers over the middle of the field. Their linebackers are not very good. And one of the things that we know about Brock Purdy, specifically this year, he is throwing intermediate routes at a very high rate. He wants to throw the football in chunks. He wants to get it behind the linebackers. He wants to attack the middle of the field. But also, he doesn't really care about where he's throwing the football right now. He is on fire and confidence. He will throw it 50-50 situations. He will throw it down the field. He's one of the most aggressive quarterbacks in the NFL right now. So, but the biggest thing that you're going to find success in is throwing the football over the middle of the field, typically with more play action. Now, the 49ers, as you guys all know, have not been throwing the football a ton of play action. I believe close to 20% of their dropbacks this year have been play action, which is not a Kyle Shanahan staple. He wants to play action. He wants those. And that's the one thing in this game. I know they were doing it more against the Seahawks. They're probably going to do it again against the Chiefs simply because you get the linebackers moving. It creates even more problems for them moving because they're not the best in coverage. So the simple play action, adding it back to the offense. I know that Jordan Mason has the shoulder injury. He was limited today or quote unquote limited, projected to be limited in practice on a Wednesday. But I expect him to play. My own personal opinion is that he's probably going to end up playing in this game. And just even just throwing it in there, if your run game is not being as successful, play action still has an impact. So the fact they've gone away from it was one of the more baffling things to me. But seeing them get back to it against the Seahawks was more of what I expected because they're probably gearing up to throw it against the Chiefs and these linebackers because, like I mentioned, that is the one area that I do think that they can get after this Chiefs defense.
You know, it's interesting you talk about play action, and we know that play action, if a quarterback runs play action, quarterback rating on average, passer rating on average goes up about 14 points. It's pretty significant. But we also know that they weren't running play action, to your point. And Kyle was asked about this, I believe it was after the Vikings game. And he said, well, you know, teams are just showing us things that are taking us out of it. You know, it's if they show us certain things and we feel like we're not going to have time because it does take time to turn your back to the defense, we're not going to do it. And so I know that Spagnuolo has heard that. I know that Spagnuolo has poured over the film. And I'm curious to see how much of what Minnesota did impacted their ability to even try play action. And if he's going to give some of those looks, now he may do different things with those looks, but just simply knowing, hey, if I give this look, they may not go play action. And that's going to help our linebackers. I'm curious to see if Spagnuolo can force Shanahan away from play action, much like we saw in some of those other games. So that'll be a curious chess match that I want to see play out here.
It's interesting because I think you could even just assume that, like, the mental chess match, right? If Spags hears him say that, Kyle's like, I know he heard him say that, so I'm gonna do it anyway. Like, just kind of get in each other's heads. So it's definitely one of the things, like I said, that does inhibit it inhibits this defense the most, is the fact that you can attack these linebackers, especially when you go wide, which we know that the 49ers love to get in their 21 personnel with 2 running backs and just kind of spread guys out when you can.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I think that the Chiefs will be at their quote unquote weakest point, because you have to then go with your base linebackers, because the Chiefs match with 21 and 12 personnel at, I believe, the highest rate of base in the NFL, because they're very comfortable in base. And that's where you're going to see, maybe you get Kyle Juszczyk on a Drew Tranquill, who has not been very good in pass coverage this year, or a Leo Chanel, keep doing it. I'll fix it, Leo. Chanel, who, for all the chess pieces, things you can use with him, he's still learning as a coverage player. So the key is trying to make sure you don't get some of these linebackers matched up one-on-one with a tight end, like, George Kittle, or even your fullback or running back. So that's what I'm looking forward to seeing what happens there.
Now, y'all lost, was it Willie Gay that left this
He plays for
offseason to the Saints?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a big loss. That was a big loss as far as, kind of what he brings to the table. So interesting. All right. That's one for the good guys. All right. Let's go to the flip side, though. What is a matchup that you are confident in when it comes to the Chiefs and their ability to maybe exploit something with the 49ers, or just be better at than the 49ers are? What is that matchup for you?
So right now, the Chiefs' run game is, I believe, and fun fact that I did not know, the Chiefs' offense is second in success rate. The entire offense is second in success rate this year, which, with Patrick Mahomes throwing at a 4.8 yards on average clip over the line of scrimmage, is not something I would have expected to see. And their rushing success rate is top 3 in the NFL. Not something that you could say about them last year. The San Francisco 49ers, as you guys know, their run defense has not been very good this year. And there's some injuries along that defensive line that could absolutely be exploited. And now, 2 weeks ago, my film room that I did on the Chiefs versus the Saints, the most successful thing that they did was play action. They finally started to run the football and then have Patrick Mahomes run play action, which is something I've been asking for years, because it takes some of the load off of his shoulders. And you pointed out, he is throwing the ball into such heavy windows all the time. If you can finally just run the football a little bit more effectively, which they have been, you can run play action, you're going to create chunk gains. And they did that against the Saints. Now, the Saints defense is pretty awful. You guys saw what happened with the Bucks this last weekend. 50 plus points were laid on them. They're not very good. I have a lot more respect for the players on the 49ers defense. I know that they've had some injuries. They're going to come to play this game. They are, even with the injuries, you're going to get a better effort out of them regardless.
Yeah.
And that's still, I believe, they can run the football more effectively than they did in the Super Bowl. And that will help at least take some of it off of Patrick Mahomes, because even going back to that 2022 game where they just kind of threw the ball all over the place, that's not going to be the same effectiveness this season as it was that year. You're a lot more transition. So I think that the matchup that I'm most looking forward to seeing is, the Chiefs. And the Chiefs rushers have been tackled for a loss or no gain on a league low 9.4% of their designed runs. So they are getting positive yards at a drastic clip. And that is, again, not something you could say about this Chiefs team last year. And I'm excited for, to see what they can continue to do, even with a 29-year-old Kareem Hunt as your running back one.
Yeah, it's interesting, because I think what 49er fans are realizing is that, just as a pure runner, I know this sounds crazy to say, because CMC is the best of the best, but as a pure runner, Mason definitely is there, right? But CMC does all the other things. He's great as a pass blocker. He's great at route running. He's got the most sure hands you can have as a running back, and that's what makes him special. That's what sets him apart. I kind of look at Kareem Hunt as a pure runner. If he's even close to what he was in his prime, and I get it, he's 29, but he also doesn't have a lot of mileage because of some of the things that happened throughout his career. He can get downhill on teams, and he can do it in a big way. He can punish you. And so I look at that interior offensive line of the Chiefs, and it is the best in the NFL. It is elite among elite among elite, all three of those guys up the middle. And you add in Kareem Hunt, the 49ers, if you're going to beat them and put their defense in conflict, you've got to run right up the middle, not be afraid to do it, and you got to take shots down the field. And I think the Chiefs have the recipe to do that. I think their best path to success is to not abandon the run game. They cannot do that. They've got to at least give 20, 25 attempts. Somewhere in that range is going to be a sweet spot, and soften up the middle of that defense. And I think that's their biggest path to success. And I also want to point out one more thing. You watched Super Bowl just like I did. And the moment that Dre Greenlaw went down, that second half opened up, Travis Kelce was unguardable. Now, I know that he started out slow. He played much better the final 2 games before the bye week, but he's coming off of a bye week, which means he's going to be very well rested. Fred Warner is the best in the league as far as a coverage linebacker. That is a mismatch. I don't care who the linebacker is. If it's Travis Kelce and he is at his best, that is a mismatch. And I do worry about him getting loose against these linebackers. If they find ways to isolate him on any of the linebackers, especially if it's Campbell, the 49ers could be in for a long day defensively. So those are the matchups. Those are the things I'll be looking for and how they try to exploit the 49ers defense a little bit.
Yeah, I will say one thing on Travis Kelce. You're not getting playoff Travis Kelce. So
no, you're not.
Already, you're down a little bit because
for sure.
If there's one thing we know about Travis right now, when the playoffs come, he's going to just not care about anything. Right now, he's trying to manage to get to there, right?
For
he's
sure.
just trying to
but you are getting bye week Travis Kelce. I will say that. I think that accounts for
bye
something.
week Andy Reid. So that's usually a good thing.
Tom says San Francisco wins because Vegas doesn't lose. That is true. Vegas doesn't tend to lose. All right, brother, listen. We've come to that time in the show, and I know you personally respect the 49ers a lot more than most Chiefs fans probably do. And so I'm sure that you're going to have a tight score here. But ultimately, who do you have winning this game, and what is the final score?
Well, first of all, there is a question for me in here somewhere that I'm
okay. Where's it at? I know multiple people asked. Okay, he said, "Will you answer a question?" And then I didn't see him.
I found the question.
All right,
I will pull it out for you here because I think this is a you know ball or you don't know ball question. Okay. So I want to answer it for you, Spidey. So it says, here's my question. From your perspective as a Chiefs fan, do you think Purdy and Jimmy G are any different? Both lost to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, and Purdy has CMC unlike Jimmy G. So ball knower segment here really quickly. Brock Purdy is like 10 times the quarterback that Jimmy Garoppolo could ever be. And the reason is this season. If this were Jimmy Garoppolo in this offense, they probably would have 0 wins. I mean that literally, because what Brock Purdy has done is testing not just what he's never really done in the NFL. He is not someone who typically throws into tight windows and will consistently test them. Not only is he doing it, he's completing something like 45% of his throws that are air yards downfield in some of those situations. So I think what he's done from an ability to grow and kind of take the shoulder of this offense, which they haven't been as successful, like we talked about with the play action game. When Jimmy Garoppolo didn't have a play action game, it goes out the window. Like it was all over the place. He's so much better of an athlete. He will make plays, not just scramble drills, but go out and just make guys miss, keep his eyes downfield, and still throw the football. I don't love his arm personally. I think it's good enough. I don't think it's great, but he makes it work for him with ball placement and accuracy in the trust. So yes, to answer your question, he's so much better than Jimmy G ever could have been.
Close. Not even in the same stratosphere. They're not. It's I appreciate the question. I do, but there's no,
Yeah.
they're not close.
Just,
And yeah, the result, listen, the result was the result. It sucks that the team didn't make it further, but I've never been a big like quarterbacks wins guy. Now, don't get me wrong, the quarterback is the most important position, and they can certainly account for wins and losses. We just talked about Patrick Mahomes and how when the game is on the line, he's elite in those moments, and that does matter. It absolutely does matter, but it does take a team to keep scores close for the quarterback to be in that position. I've seen many good quarterbacks play on awful teams. Justin Herbert, I think, is one of them where the defense just allows people to score like they're a turnstile. There's nothing you can do about that. And then there are bad quarterbacks like Jimmy Garoppolo who seem to win because they have very good teams around them. Brock Purdy does have a very good team around him. He's also a good quarterback. So in this instance, a little bit of both are at play. That being said, we are here now.
Yeah.
What is the score prediction? Thank you for finding that question because I did know that he had a question. I didn't track it.
Not a problem. I just wanted to make sure I got out there because I feel responsive, like some responsibility for people to understand that I watch football and I don't just watch, just box score. Like it's very different things. This game I think hinges on what the Chiefs do with Nick Bosa. Going back to 2022. That was an Andy Reid special. He sent so many things at Nick Bosa. It had his head spinning. He didn't know which way the football was going. And that's even in the Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes figured out what he was doing. He said, you want to crash on every single run? I'm just going to take it. Figuring out what he's going to be keying on is huge because the Chiefs now will have Wanya Morris at your left tackle. It's not going to be the rookie, but it's still basically a rookie. And last week, I think he had 14 pressures, which is the most in a single game this year. That's not great for Patrick Mahomes, who, again, is being sacked at the highest rate in his NFL career so far. So I do think it hinges on what they do there. That being said, I think Andy Reid's got a couple of tricks up his sleeve. And he's already shown that he can handle what he brings specifically when he wants to. Bothers me that he did not do it to Trey Hendrickson against the Bengals. He just left his rookie left tackle out there to dry, and then he benched him. I hold grudges, okay? I hold grudges. But this game, I do think the Chiefs will eke out a victory because Andy Reid coming off of a bye is one of the nightmares for NFL teams, in my opinion. And I do believe it's going to be close. I respect the 49ers a lot. I think it's going to be a 27-24 victory in Kansas City's name.
No, that's totally fair. It is interesting you bring up the Bosa thing because on my previous show, I just had with my friend Grant, we were talking about this specifically, and I had mentioned there's something that Andy Reid sees in Bosa that nobody else sees, and he goes right at him. And it started with the end arounds and running the receivers the way he did in that 2022 game that you just talked about. And then last year with the read options, he puts them in conflict. And it reminded me, I said that it reminded me a lot of what Shanahan used to do with Aaron Donald. He was like the only guy that had Aaron Donald figured out. And Aaron Donald played almost zero factor in those games. Same thing with Bosa in these games. I know 49er fans will be like, oh, that's because he's held all the time and they're going to steal shot, the whatever. Regardless, they do put Bosa in conflict, and that is Andy Reid 100%. He likes something that he sees there, and I got to imagine he's going to test it again. Now, it doesn't mean that it's going to work this time, but he will have something for Bosa, and I'm curious to see if Bosa has been able to adjust or can adjust and come up with something different, because if he's not and it slows down his pass rush by a half tick, that's all you need for Patrick Mahomes to do his thing. And so I love that you talked about that. I would love to pick the San Francisco 49ers here. Last year from week 1 all the way through the playoffs, every single week I picked the 49ers, and I genuinely thought they were going to win all those games, including the Super Bowl. But when they lost the Super Bowl, I said on that stream, I cannot, with a good and any good sort of conscience, pick the 49ers to beat the Chiefs until I visually see it. I can't do it. So when that matchup arises again, and every time that the Chiefs continue to win, I will pick the Chiefs from here on out. Hopefully the 49ers can get this monkey off their back and move forward. No, it doesn't mean that if they meet up in a Super Bowl that all of a sudden they have the upper hand. But this is a game that means so much for the San Francisco 49ers. All of their players are talking about it. They're all saying, we need to prove it to ourselves that we can beat this team. And the guys that have been here for a while, the Bosas, the Warners, the Kittles, they have those previous scars. They can say that they're confident if they match up in a Super Bowl after losing this game, and they will say they're confident. But they are letting you know right now in this moment, they need this win, and it means everything to them. So for me, I would love to say, hey, the 49ers are going to win because to them, this game is everything. And to the Chiefs, like, we're 5-0. If we lose, no big deal, whatever. I just can't do it until I see it. And so for me, this game's going to be tight. Kyle Shanahan in tight games isn't the best. Patrick Mahomes in tight games is absolutely the best. And I just get that weird feeling that the Chiefs will find a way to do it again. Also, I don't feel good that the 49ers are at best on to their second field goal kicker. At worst, might be on to their third field goal kicker in a tight game. And on the opposite side, you have a kicker who is top 3 in the league and he's not 3. Okay. So if it comes down to it, I certainly trust the kicker for Kansas City and Butker. And I don't know that I can trust a second or third string kicker. So for those reasons, I'm going to, for the first time this year as well, and you're the only one, by the way, that has been on this channel and picked against the 49ers as well. So this is the first time this year on Behind Enemy Lines that either my guest or myself is picking against the 49ers, and both of us are doing it in this game. I'm going to go 24-23, Kansas City in a nail biter.
That's one hell of a score. Obviously, you guys. I appreciate all of you in here. You guys are being fantastic, and all it's just not just supporting me, but Jesse, as you guys always do. And we always have good conversation. And I look forward to watching these games so much, not just because of the players, but because of the coaches. I love what Kyle Shanahan does from a schematic standpoint. We're seeing what he does get stolen all over the place. And I know that he's got this huge monkey on his back. I do think one day he'll get rid of it. It's just hard. It's a really hard thing to do. So I'm looking forward to this I'm looking forward to this game a lot.
Yeah, me as well. Let me knock out these super chats. Dave says Lyle is Henry Winkler and Waterboy, but no victory. My gosh. Cryptic says, why does it feel like the Dynasty Chiefs, especially with the back-to-back champs, underdogs again when the Niners haven't proven they can beat them? What do you think about them being underdogs? Is that a bit surprising to you?
It's always a little surprising to me, but I understand when you've seen how their offense has played. I also, I don't honestly. With this specific game, it makes much less sense to me because of the up and down facet in which the 49ers have played this year. The injuries, again, they have a ton of injuries too, and both sides are showcasing the injuries happen in the NFL. Feels like more than ever right now, and we're seeing that on both sides here. But it feels like the offense kind of has to rely on Brock Purdy doing what he's never done before. He's succeeding. It's eventually, I just feel like you wouldn't see them be a favorite in a game against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, but they are. So, I mean, we'll see. The Chiefs like to get down to be able to come back, right? Like that's what they want to do. Like Patrick Mahomes is more comfortable with a 10-0 with it being down 10-0 than he is being up 10-0.
Well, and the 49ers in 4 straight games have had leads, and they've given their the opposing team an opportunity. Now, in 2 of those games, what was it? The Rams and the Cardinals, those teams were able to take advantage of those opportunities and come back and win those games. Now, the Patriots and the Seahawks were not able to, but all 4 of those teams were given the opportunity. So, if the Chiefs get down, I'm sure that the 49ers will give them the opportunity. And if they do, Patrick Mahomes is not the one to give the opportunity to. So there is that. Dave says, Daniel, honestly, do you think Kyle's a bad coach? He definitely said he's not that already. So I think he's answered that question. I think a different question is, and you said that he'll eventually get the monkey off his back. Sometimes a change of scenery, as you know, Andy Reid is the perfect example of this, might be on the menu. Do you feel, just from the outside looking in, that if this year it doesn't happen for the 49ers, that not that they need to move on from Kyle, but that their opportunity or their window is kind of closed and they've got to do something different to reopen that?
Yes, this is their all-in year, in my opinion. Things are
Yeah.
going to start. Brock's going to have to get paid. He's going to have to
Yeah.
get his money. Things are going to have to shift. Look at what happened with Buffalo. They are shifting their offense. Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs have had to shift their offense after he got paid. Things happen differently after you pay the quarterback, and they already have Debo, Ayuk, Kittle paid. Trent Williams getting paid. Christian, there is a lot of money in that offense. And so, yes, I do believe this is the year. And I will say, if it doesn't go well this season, and if they go out early in the postseason, it might end up being the owner's decision to say, look, we love you, but we need a change. Something has to be
Mhm.
different. And I think Kyle will go elsewhere and win a Super Bowl if he does not win one in San Francisco.
Yeah, I could see that. I really could. Manny says this guy over the other guy that you brought on last year. There were two Chiefs guys I brought on last year. Daniel here was one of them, and absolutely love Daniel. There's the reason why he is back. But I love all my guests, so I appreciate anybody who's willing to come on. But yes, Daniel is. Daniel's not only like one of the better Chiefs guys, he's just one of the better football knowers around that I've talked to. So I love having him
I
on. Dave
appreciate that.
says, bring this guy back more. Come on come on, chat. We got to pay Jesse's bills after Hurricane Milton had his way with him. I think Lyle's, I don't know what he's saying there. A good team, and he steps in the way of them. He chokes in the biggest moments. He wears brown pants against Kansas City on purpose. My God, dude, you're just so relentless, bro. Thank you so much for the super chat, though, Dave. I really do appreciate you. My God,
I love the follow up.
because he's gonna poop himself. Yeah, no, we got it, man. We got. You know what that reminds me of? I don't know
Oh,
if you have you ever seen the movie Road Trip?
probably.
Okay, it's a
Probably.
stupid comedy from back in the day. Anyways, there's a point in there. Anybody who's seen it will understand this reference, but because it's your own dog, get it? So anybody who's seen that movie, hopefully you're now laughing at that. But that's exactly what just happened with Dave. Hugo says if Demon Mode is healthy, he's gonna f it all, f y'all up. Who's Demon Mode?
I don't know. Probably Mason, I would think. I don't know. Or Kittle. I
Yeah,
don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, Hugo. I gotta imagine that's the route that you're taking. It's got to be Mason, but I don't know. We'll see. I'm curious because this is a stout run defense. Dave says Daniel should be more of a regular guest if possible. Dude, he's so busy. But yeah, I love Daniel. He's incredible. Tom says write this down. Super Bowl Bills 28, Bucks 21. Wow. Real quick, on the way out, I will ask you this because you're obviously the Chiefs should be the favorite until they prove that they're not. But what do you think? I don't take the Jets seriously, so I'm not even going to ask about them, to be honest with you. I really don't. I haven't taken them seriously all offseason. I'm not taking them seriously now. But the Bills going and getting a really, really good receiver in Amari Cooper, who's, yes, is having a down year. I think a lot of that is Watson. What did you think of that move? And does that pique your interest as like, oh, okay, this could get interesting down the stretch?
I mean, absolutely. Whenever you add a player like that who is still getting open at a very high level, it takes 2 seconds to go find clips of Amari Cooper dusting fools and Deshaun Watson just not getting him the football. I believe
Yeah.
he has a 45% in uncatchable ball rate in Cleveland this year. 45% of the time he's
Dude.
throwing the football, it's uncatchable. It's just not good. So yes, I think getting a change of scenery is going to be fantastic for Amari Cooper. And if you watch that offense when they didn't have just a guy like Khalil Shakir, who I love, I think he's a fantastic player. It shows you how volatile the system is. Guys that couldn't get open. Again, I'm a big Keon Coleman guy. He's a rookie. And They asked him to run go routes basically, and that kind of thing.
Jump
So
balls and go routes. Yeah.
it completely changes the dynamic of their offense because it gives them someone else outside of Khalil Shakir that you have to, if you play man coverage, oh, guess what? Now there's two guys that can get open, and then you have to add Josh Allen's legs onto it. So it changes the math of that offense where we saw Stephon Diggs change the math of that offense until, he started to go downhill in Buffalo for whatever reason happened over there. But yeah, at the end of the day, I'm very interested in what happens there. I don't know if he's going to play this week. According to their coach, he's not sure how much he's going to play. It doesn't really matter. All that matters is how he plays in December and January, because I do believe they will be there.
What do you think of Josh Allen? Like, if you're doing your top 3 quarterbacks, is he number 2, or are you a Burrow guy? I know it, or maybe somebody else. Maybe you're a Lamar guy. I don't want to put anybody's name out there, but what do you think?
Yeah, I think right now Lamar is number 2. I think Josh is, maybe it's 2A and 2B. I think they're both fantastic. I have zero bad things to say about either of them. Just they have some parts of their game that aren't immense strengths. Like, that's really all I can say. Josh Allen's amazing, and Lamar Jackson, every time they have to play him, he ran over 100 yards against the Chiefs in week 1. Their run game was not successful except for Lamar Jackson. It's in every game that they play, it's Josh Allen, consistently. The 13 seconds is only there because Josh Allen is, I'm not going to relive a terrible Chiefs defense moment, but the guy that was playing corner for the Chiefs in that game that got dusted by Gabe Davis, who can't even get open in Jacksonville, is no longer on the Chiefs for a reason. So, but Josh Allen is a huge reason that they're even close in those football games.
Well, statistically, Josh Allen is doing everything that Patrick Mahomes is in those games, and maybe slightly more. It's just, what do you do? So sometimes you play great and you just can't win. So I know that you recognize that. 2 more real quick. Hugo says Demon Mode is Mason. I gave him that name. Make it happen. That makes sense because he's a lot like Beast Mode. So I like where your head's at. I should have picked up on that. You definitely didn't have to pay to explain it, but I appreciate you either way. And Cryptic says Kelsey is Hall of Fame. Why is he struggling? Is he nearing the end? He's 35, man. Yeah, he's definitely nearing the end.
Yeah. So, when you take a player out of the game, that teams finally started to do, they finally just said, we're done. We're not doing this anymore. When I think I go back to the Chargers game last year, the first one where he was over 100 yards in the first half. That is when defenses said, we got to stop this. Every week, Travis Kelce is just dominating us. So I think there's a lot of attention, as there always is, on Travis Kelce, but also they were feeding Rashee Rice. Rashee Rice was getting double-digit targets because defenses were targeting Travis Kelce. So the Chiefs were just like, fine, we're going to throw the football to the guy that's not getting that attention in Rashee Rice. And then we're starting to see, things you can still scheme Travis Kelce up. He is nearing the end, obviously. Like Jesse said, he's 35 years old. And what matters right now for him is winning Super Bowls, winning playoff games. So when January rolls around, you're probably going to see Travis Kelce look a little bit different than he does right now.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. I got to do a better job and not turn these into questions. Tom says the Chiefs came into the playoffs as a dog. Bills go in as a dog. Washington misses the playoffs after a hot start, and the Bucks will seem unbeatable by. Whoa. Okay. Listen. Baker Mayfield is having himself a season, and him and Allen came out in that same class, so that would be an interesting matchup. It really would. Dave says we have to pay to explain things because you're cute and not bright. Thanks for that, Dave. I really appreciate you, man. You're a true gentleman and a scholar. My God. All right. Listen, Daniel, as always, thank you so much for coming on, man. Hopefully we will be able to do this at least one more time throughout the season. Maybe they meet up again in the Super Bowl and we get to talk this one through. Really appreciate you. Chat, go show him some love. Link will be in the description to his Chiefs channel. And if nothing else, like I said, if the 49ers win, you can go troll. He can take it. He's built for this. All right, y'all. Thank you so much. Have a blessed night. I'll be back tomorrow with the 4-man front, 10 p.m. Eastern. Daniel, thank you so much as always. We'll talk soon, brother. Peace.
Always, man. Appreciate it.